Did you know there's a hidden mathematical pattern in financial history that has predicted every single major economic collapse for the last 200 years? And guess what? Right now, we're sitting exactly where the formula says the next catastrophic crash will begin. Think about it. October 24th, 1929, Black Thursday, the day that kicked off the Great Depression and wiped out fortunes literally overnight. Or how about September 15th, 2008? The collapse of Lehman Brothers that sent shockwaves through the entire global financial system and devastated millions of lives. Most people think these were random, unpredictable events. Black swans that just came out of nowhere, but they weren't. They were mathematical inevitabilities. They followed a precise timeline that economists have been tracking since the 1800s. The pattern is actually simple, but it's also terrifying. Every 18 years, the housing market hits a peak and then crashes. And every 90 years, that housing crash lines up perfectly with a massive stock market collapse, the kind that literally reshapes civilization as we know it. Let's do the math. 1929 plus 90 years is 2019. But hold on. The big crash didn't happen in 2019, did it? Why not? Because of unprecedented government intervention that delayed the inevitable, the Federal Reserve printed trillions of dollars and artificially suppressed interest rates to levels we've never seen in human history. They didn't prevent the crash. They just kicked the can down the road and made the problem even bigger. They amplified it, and now that mathematical sequence is catching up with a vengeance. The delayed crash from 2019 is now combining with the natural 18-year housing cycle peak, which is set for 2026. We have two devastating forces converging into what could be the most destructive financial event in modern history. The warning signs are everywhere, but you have to know how to read them. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how this pattern works, why this isn't just another wild prediction, and why it's a mathematical certainty that's been building for decades. This is something you absolutely need to understand. Stick around, because what I'm about to show you could change the way you see everything. Hey everyone, have you ever wondered why real estate markets seem to crash every couple of decades? It feels random. But what if I told you it's a predictable pattern, one that has been repeating for centuries? It's called the 18-year real estate cycle, and understanding it could change how you see the economy forever. This isn't some new theory. Back in the 1870s, an economist named Henry George discovered this pattern by analyzing centuries of data from countries like the US, Britain, and Australia. He found that real estate markets move in predictable waves lasting about 18 years from one peak to the next. So how does it work? It all starts with a long, slow climb. For about 14 years, property prices rise steadily. As they go up, people get excited. Credit gets easier to obtain, and everyone starts to believe the good times will never end. Then, around the 14-year mark, we get a little wobbler mid-cycle dip. Prices drop slightly, a few people get nervous and sell, but the economy is still strong, so the market bounces back quickly and shoots even higher. This is where things get dangerous. That quick recovery creates a false sense of security. People think, see? Real estate always goes up. Lenders throw caution to the wind, offering risky loans. Speculators go wild, and ordinary people take on huge debts to buy properties they can't really afford. Builders start overbuilding, creating a glut of supply. The whole market becomes a house of cards built on speculation and debt. Then, around year 17 or 18, it all comes crashing down. A small trigger, like a rise in interest rates, or just the collective realization that prices are insane, causes panic. Everyone rushes to sell at once. Speculators are wiped out, and banks that made reckless loans start to fail. The result isn't just a correction. It has a full-blown crash that can take years to recover from and often drags the entire economy down with it. Think about it. This pattern perfectly describes the lead up to the Great Depression. The Roaring '20s saw a massive real estate bubble, especially in Florida. When it burst in 1926, it weakened the financial system right before the 1929 stock market crash. The same thing happened before 2008. A real estate boom that started in the 90s went into hyperdrive with subprime lending. When that bubble popped, it triggered the global financial crisis. By understanding this cycle, you can see the warning signs and make smarter decisions with your own finances. It's a powerful tool for navigating the economic ups and downs. Did you know about the 80 in your real estate cycle? Well, it turns out there's an even deeper, more powerful pattern hiding underneath it. Roughly every 90 years, the real estate crash lines up perfectly with a massive stock market bubble that has been growing for decades. This perfect storm creates what some economists call a super crash. We're not just talking about a recession or even a depression. This is a complete reset of the entire economic system. This 90-year pattern comes from something called the long wave cycle. It was first noticed back in the 1920s by a Russian economist named Nikolai. He studied economic data all the way back to the 1780s and found that economies seemed to move in these long 52-year waves. Each wave had about 30 years of growth, followed by 20 to 30 years of stagnation. Tragically, Kondratiev couldn't finish his work, but later economists picked up where he left off, refining his model. They discovered that when you measure the full cycle from the start of one major crash to the next, the waves are actually closer to 90 years long. So what drives this huge 90-year cycle? It all comes down to one thing: debt. During the long expansion phase, debt just grows and grows, much faster than the actual economy. Governments borrow for wars and social programs. Companies borrow to expand and buy out competitors. And we all borrow to buy homes, cars, and all the stuff we want. For decades, this debt-fueled growth feels great. It creates prosperity and rising living standards. But here's the catch. Debt grows exponentially while the real economy grows more or less in a straight line. Eventually, the debt load gets so huge that more and more money goes just to paying off the interest instead of being invested in new, productive things. Innovation slows down, and the system becomes incredibly fragile, totally dependent on even more credit just to keep going. When something finally spooks the market and shakes people's confidence, the whole house of cards collapses. Debt that seemed manageable suddenly becomes impossible to pay back. This is exactly what happened in 1929. The Roaring Twenties were a decade of insane debt-fueled speculation. When the crash came, it didn't just wipe out the speculators, it took the whole economic system down with it. We saw a similar pattern leading up to 2008. Decades of explosive growth in government, corporate, and household debt made the whole economy dependent on an endless supply of credit. When the housing bubble finally burst, the over-leveraged system just couldn't handle it and collapsed. It's a powerful pattern that is repeated throughout history. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Have you ever noticed that history seems to repeat itself? Especially when it comes to money and the economy. Well, what if I told you there are mathematical cycles that have predicted every major crash for the past 200 years? And 2 of them are pointing to the exact same date. We're approaching a major convergence point. The 18-year real estate cycle, which peaked in 2007, is due to peak again around 2025 or 2026. At the same time, the 90-year supercycle that crashed in 1929 is set to hit its next peak somewhere between 2019 and 2026. Both of these powerful cycles are converging right where mathematical models predict the next super crash. But what makes 2026 uniquely dangerous is what happened after the 2008 crisis. The government's response didn't fix the underlying debt problem. It made it exponentially worse. Think about it. Government debt, corporate debt, and even household debt have all exploded to levels that are hard to even imagine. We're talking about a total debt burden 3 times larger than it was before the 2008 crisis. For years, this massive mountain of debt was manageable because interest rates were near zero. But that's over. To fight persistent inflation, the Federal Reserve has cranked up interest rates at the fastest pace since the 1980s. This is happening at a time when debt is at an all-time high. The math is brutal. Every percentage point increase adds hundreds of billions in interest payments. We're already seeing the first casualties. Remember, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and First Republic. They collapsed in 2023. These weren't isolated incidents. They were mathematical inevitabilities caused by the impossible combination of massive debt and rising interest rates. And this is just the beginning. The commercial real estate market is in a death spiral. With the shift to remote work, office buildings are sitting half empty. The mortgages on these buildings taken out at low rates are now coming due and need to be refinanced at much higher rates. The numbers just don't work. Owners are already starting to walk away from properties worth hundreds of millions. Over the next few years, more than $2 trillion in commercial mortgages will need to be refinanced. A huge portion of them will likely default, which will devastate the regional banks that hold those loans. As these banks fail or pull back on lending, it will become much harder for regular people to get mortgages for homes. This is the setup for the housing crash part of the cycle. The mathematics of history are absolute. 1929 plus 90 years brings us to this exact window. The cycles are converging with unprecedented debt levels and rising rates. The pattern has repeated for centuries because human nature doesn't change. It's a cycle of greed, fear, leverage, and then collapse. The real question isn't if the crash will happen, but if you'll be prepared for it. Because when this convergence completes, the world on the other side will be a very different place. Thanks for watching. If you found this insightful, make sure to like and subscribe for more content to help you navigate what's ahead.